Good afternoon and welcome to Wise Women Weekdays. I am Lucinda Wild
And I'm Danielle de Winter.
and we are going to be talking about SSRIs.
So for those lovely people among you who don't know what SSRIs are, they're antidepressants or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
Brilliant. Yes, they are. And that includes Prozac, citalopram, Cipramil, and Zoloft.
Yep. Some of the most common ones.
Some of the most common ones that you may even be taking.
Now what I thought was interesting is that over 8 million people in the UK are taking these things at the moment,
Oh my God.
according to the Office for National Statistics. And are they, my question to you is, do you think they're really providing long-term solutions, or are they kind of some short-term panacea that maybe in some situations is going to cause more problems down the line than it actually solves?
I think it's a short-term panacea. I absolutely do. And I would also think if there's 8 million plus people in society taking an antidepressant medication, why is depression on the rise?
that is the $50
Baffling.
million question, Ollie.
It's one of those questions that can't be answered.
Well, a lovely doctor, holistic doctor, who I chat to on occasion, said in his experience, people are never depressed because there is a lack of a pharmaceutical in their body. People are depressed because there's something going on in their lives. And this could be as bizarre and awful as having parasites in the brain, or having leaky gut, or having irritable bowel syndrome, or being poisoned by, maybe heavy metals or some other toxin. Or it could be because they've been abused as a child and have been incredibly mistreated. Or it could be because right now they've just lost their jobs and their parent is sick and the mortgage company is putting pressure on them and they're under unbelievable pressure. And taking a drug, is that really going to help them with any of that? That's my question.
I have first-hand experience of being on Prozac, citalopram. Did I do Zoloft? Possibly. No, I didn't do that. So, and my depression was circumstantial. It wasn't down to a chemical imbalance in my brain. And guess what, Danielle?
What?
When I stopped taking them, when I did a complete detox of all drugs, including alcohol, and changed my lifestyle, started doing more exercise, eating healthy, taking supplements including ashwagandha, turmeric, and reducing the inflammation in my body, taking a good probiotic.
Yes.
I am no longer depressed or anxious.
And you're not taking any drugs anymore?
Not taking any drugs anymore. I do, some microdoses of magic mushrooms.
It's different.
Because that kind of resets my brain.
And I think that's brilliant. Well done. It's so big because you are one of the lucky ones.
Yes, exactly. I am one of the lucky ones. And one of the reasons that I want to talk about this and be part of this conversation is I want to help other people get to where I am. Because for me, a lifetime of misery, ill health, obesity, not being able to take part in the things that I love and value would make me depressed.
Oh yeah. According to a lovely Dutch psychologist called, I think, Dr. Joseph Witt, but don't get me wrong, or De Witt. Now I'm going to lose my train of thought.
Maybe you should take an antidepressant.
Maybe I should take an antidepressant, exactly. He said, so a large proportion of the people who do take antidepressants end up with some level of sexual dysfunction. And so that means they have trouble, if it's imagine a young guy, he's 18, he's leaving home for the first time, he's going to uni. And at uni, for whatever reason, he finds it a bit strange and a bit hostile, and he's starting to feel a bit anxious.
Yes.
And he's worried about maybe not getting good enough grades. So he sees the school counsellor and tells him, and the school counsellor, not really knowing what to say, refers him to the local doctor. And the local doctor says, "Oh, young man, you sound like you're a bit depressed." should I prescribe something for you? And he puts him on an SSRI. And this young man happens to be one of the, I'm not sure what the percentage is, but let's say 15%, who don't just have acute sexual dysfunction when they're taking the drugs, but it actually damages, sorry for the rude word, it damages the tissue, and this is clinically proven, of their...
The willy.
Of the willy, thank you.
Yeah, we can say willy, can't we?
Yeah, and there's been a recent study by San Diego Sexual Health Clinic where they, with a light ultrasound, examined the tissue of various willies from various volunteers, and several of them who had been taking these SSRIs, and they were like between 18 and 25 years old, so virile young man at the time when the willy should be really looking grand.
Yeah, because men are at their sexual peak at the age of around 17.
Yep. The tissue age of their willies was equivalent to that of an 80-year-old man, of a geriatric, and apparently the damage was permanent.
Fertility rates are going down.
All the time.
All the time. Is this because willies are not working? Because of SSRIs?
Is this because of SSRIs?
But it's not just teenage males that are affected by this.
No, everybody's affected.
One of the largest groups on SSRIs are young women. And young women who end up with a numb, shall we call it fanny, as we're going with willies for boys. A numb fanny.
I've never heard of that expression.
What fanny?
Not the numb fanny.
Numb fanny. Yeah, it's not something I've experienced, thank God. Actually, no, it might have been helpful if I did. Yes, you can judge me, dog, you can.
This is Elsa.
Yes, hello, Elsa. Elsa's not on SSRIs, so she hasn't got a numb fanny.
Elsa can tell you she is Mother Nature's antidote to depression. You hug Elsa, and I defy anybody not to feel in bliss.
Oh, well, they. What's the substance that increases in the brain? When
Oxytocin.
Oxytocin. So by stroking this beautiful dog, I'm having a natural hit of an antidepressant.
You are.
She is so beautiful.
And now that we're talking about this, even though it has nothing to do with SSRIs, a lovely study, which I adore, tested the gut flora, the composition of the gut microbiome of people who own dogs and people who don't own dogs. And among the group of people who own dogs, they subdivided that into people who own city dogs, who trot around on pavements and concrete all day, and country dogs, like Elsa, who are allowed to gallop in fields and forests. And the people who had country dogs had double the beneficial gut microbiome biodiversity, than the people who didn't have dogs. Which means that having a country dog is incredibly good for your health.
Yes, it is. Because most of the serotonin our body produces is produced in the gut.
By the little critters in your tummy.
Yeah. So if you have healthy microbiome,
yes.
So you're dodging homogenized, I can't say that, homogenized milk, that basically leaks through the wall of the gut, causes leaky gut, and then all the other nasty bacteria go through. Alcohol causes leaky gut.
It does.
As we were saying last week, it blasts away all healthy bacteria, but the unhealthy bacteria can leak into the bloodstream.
They do.
Causing autoimmune diseases, depression, and all sorts of nasties.
But the great thing is the lining of your gut does regenerate every few days if you start putting good stuff in there. So although good nutrition is not a universal panacea for depression, it helps enormously just to start eating healthy fats, things like organic grass-fed butter, coconut oil, stuff that will, believe it or not, stuff that contains enough cholesterol so your body can produce that lovely lining, the coating of all your nerves, called the myelin sheath, which basically is like the plastic around electric wiring.
Yes.
So if somebody damaged or ripped off the plastic around wiring, how long do you think that wiring would last?
Well, it becomes dangerous and sparks come out and it can cause a fire.
Exactly. Well, the same thing happens in your body and in your brain, in your nerves, if you don't have enough cholesterol, because the myelin sheath is 70% cholesterol. But that will be for a chat we have later about statins, so that's not for today. But in a nutshell, if you eat enough healthy raw fats from avocados, flaxseed oil, coconut oil, grass-fed butter.
What about meat?
Organic grass-fed meat. I think for me, meat is fabulous, but it's better nowadays to eat less of it and make sure it's incredibly high quality than to just eat meat. Because the thing with meat is I find it makes you happy. You feel truly sated. It's a very easy bioavailable form of protein. So eating a bit of meat boosts our immune system because our white blood cells find it incredibly easy to use the meat, the protein from meat, to make antibodies. But having said that, mass-produced, mass-farmed meat is nowadays, first of all, it's mistreated, so you feel so sorry for the critters. Secondly, it's pumped full of hormones. They are injected with so many toxins because the safety standards that are valid for human vaccination are not valid for animal vaccination. So I don't think they're as clean as they need to be. In fact, I know those shops are not as clean as they need to be. And so all sorts of byproducts get injected into the animals. And when we eat them,
we're ingesting
those byproducts. So it's better to eat small amounts of organic grass-fed meat that's been outdoors, roaming the hills all its life, and then have some grass-fed eggs, some free-range eggs, and a little bit of wild fish, and otherwise stick to your lentils and your rice and your veggies and your quinoa and your millet and masses of vegetables and lots of healthy herbs and the healthy fats. I would rather do that than try to eat meat every day just because it makes you feel satisfied and strong, but eat stuff that's come out of some huge factory farm because they contain too much junk, way too much junk.
Yeah. I mean, last night I had a locally farmed piece of rump steak. It was a great big fat thing, and I felt so good immediately after I'd eaten it, and that feeling of well-being has carried on into the next day.
Yes. Yeah.
And I did also eat like almost an entire thing of cheesy leeks, but again it was made with
lovely
grass-fed milk, grass-fed butter, grass-fed local cheeses, and organically grown.
That sounds
local
gorgeous.
leeks. I mean, I was stuffed. But then that's all I'd eaten all day because I intermittent fast, have one meal a day, get all my calories in one meal.
That's why you look so good. That's so clever.
Yeah, because I mean, I live on coffee the rest of the time. That's probably not the healthiest choice, but healthy. Coffee is good to reduce levels of depression.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And coffee, as long as you don't drink masses and masses of it.
Or stuff from some of those nasty high street chains that taste like OXO.
I mean, so coffee does also, small amounts, increase your immunity. So it improves blood flow, improves short-term oxygenation. So I love coffee.
Yes.
It's important to buy good quality coffee as well because the cheaper stuff has probably been sitting in a warehouse for months and months and it's full of mold. And as far as my coffee studies have gone, it's not the actual coffee or the caffeine that's so bad for you, it's the mold on the coffee, the mycotoxins that can then cause mold in the body that will, that can cause inflammation and autoimmune disease and depression and all sorts of other downside effects. So as with everything, good quality is the key.
So and SSRIs are not a good quality drug. I mean, I've noticed through the research that I've been doing the last couple of days, and I've really only just touched the tip of the iceberg in the horrors of SSRIs. There's actually a website called Murder Meds that is talking about the amount of school shooters and murderers that have been on SSRIs, reducing their SSRIs or are having adverse side effects.
Well, now that you've said that, I also, in my little research, read about a great psychiatrist called David Healy, who interviewed James Holmes. Now, James Holmes was the teenager who shot about 70 people in some big theatre, I think it was called the Aurora Theatre, shooting in America. And he's now in prison, several life sentences. And when I looked at his Wikipedia page, it talked all about, depression and being bipolar and having wanted to murder people all his life. But when I listened to the interview of a clinical psychiatrist who had examined him, the psychiatrist said it's clear, and the clinical notes demonstrate, that James Healy was on antidepressants and he had a severe psychotic reaction to those antidepressants.
Wow, so you can go from feeling a bit down about your life situation to becoming a mass murderer when
Exactly.
you take SSRIs.
Don't do this at home.
Don't do this at home. And I would say don't do it without the help of a professional, but my God. So the medical professionals, not all medical professionals, absolutely baffle me. Why do they take the Hippocratic, I can't say it now, Hippocratic oath of do no harm when they're prescribing things like SSRIs?
Well, nowadays it should be called the Hippocratic Oath.
I think it should.
Sorry for that.
And I'm actually thinking about 2 doctors that
Yes.
treated me. One when I had come off prescription medicines, including SSRIs, and he, in his brilliant medical opinion, said, "You're drug fucked." And the reason that I was drug fucked was because of him and his prescription pad.
And he's the one who said that.
Yes.
So they're not just, he was not just incompetent in prescribing the meds, but he was not very kind.
No, he was a big fat, red-faced alcoholic. He had the alcoholic nose, and he was giving people medical advice. Actually, he wasn't giving medical advice. He was giving harmful advice to protect his huge salary and probably getting kickbacks from the pharmaceutical companies. Do doctors in the UK get that?
I know in America they do. I'm not sure whether they get kickbacks, but I do know that the amount a doctor receives from medical insurance per patient treatment or per patient visit has been going down consistently at a faster and faster rate in recent years. So if, for example, a doctor could spend all day seeing 4 patients 5 years ago and get a certain level of salary, now instead of seeing 4 patients, to retain the same level, he's going to see 10 patients. So he needs to just get them through, like, you know, some mass-produced sausage machine. And it's not, I can't say exactly 4 to 10. I don't know if that's the relationship. It could be 4 to 8. It could be 4 to 7. But it's roughly in the order of magnitude of a heck of a lot more. So doctors are under massive pressure just to keep their noses above board and keep earning what they used to earn, to see people more quickly. And if you're seeing somebody more quickly, it's very, let's say, easy to miss things or not go really into the root cause.
Yes. Overworked and the threat of a financial reduction is going to reduce the care that they can give.
Yeah, I mean, especially if a doctor has possibly taken out student debt in order to finish his university degree, and so he's in debt. He really, and then he marries and he maybe buys a house and has a mortgage. So now the financial pressure is mounting up, and he really needs to earn money just to keep his head above the parapet. So doctors like that are under a great deal of pressure to prescribe meds and stick to the mainstream narrative.
Yes. Financial control.
Talking about the mainstream narrative, I read about a doctor called Doc Malik, who is a orthopedic surgeon who apparently is very good clinically and has been very successful in repairing people's legs and ankles and feet. And Doc Malik started to talk about, let's say, mass media and propaganda and things like climate change or the climate change myth, or the pressure on kids these days to look into sex changes.
Yes.
Even though why you should encourage a child to have its sex changed, I cannot conceive. So all sorts of, basically, this Malik, he's a doctor who really looks at the whole global picture, isn't afraid of questioning the mainstream narrative. He worked at 3 private hospitals. He's already been kicked out from 2 of them, not because of any patient complaint. His patients apparently have all had extremely successful outcomes.
Yes.
He's clinically beyond reproach in any respect, on any level. So the fact that he was kicked out, no longer works in these hospitals, no longer operates on these patients, is not because he's not a good doctor. It's because he said climate change was a conspiracy, or he said that it makes no sense that kids are being encouraged now to have their bits lopped off before they're even sexually mature, which I think is a very sensible thing to discuss.
Yes, it is. But
But how can a doctor whose job it is to treat people be prohibited from doing his job because he speaks, he shares his opinion, and he shares other people's opinion that are not the mainstream? How is that possible?
Well, I think the narrative around transgender kids and things is really coming to the fore now. I've recently read the Hannah Barnes book, Time to Think, and it's basically a whistleblower on the Tavistock. And they were saying in the book that most of the kids that presented in the services were depressed. Some of them were on SSRIs. So was it the sexual dysfunction that made them feel that they needed to change? Obviously, this is just a thought that is unravelling in my mind at the moment.
I have to. Can I say something? So I study environmental toxicity as one of my favourite professional interests, and it's a scientific fact that the amount of pesticides and herbicides in our food has gone through the roof. The amount of chemicals in our furniture, so flame retardants and basically other chemicals that are made to stop furniture from going off, has gone up exponentially. And just our exposure to things like heavy metals, or things like, aluminium in geoengineering, mercury sprayed everywhere, or mercury in fillings and mercury in chemical and industrial applications, has increased a lot. So the average person is exposed to way more chemistry and chemicals nowadays than they used to be. And many of these chemicals disrupt hormones and are what's called endocrine disrupting.
Yes.
And so a doctor I love to talk to, who was very good, had several patients who were determined to have a sex change. They felt completely foreign in their bodies. And so he told these patients that he would be delighted to perform a sex change if first they allowed him to do a full environmental detox on them, so to cleanse their bodies of flame retardants, of glyphosate residue, of heavy metals and other toxins. And if after they were clean, they still wanted to have a sex change, he would very happily do that for them. And the truth, though, was after each one of these patients had been detoxed and cleansed of the heavy metals and the glyphosate and the farming chemicals, they all once again felt completely happy in their original sex, and not one of them wanted a sex change. So in that specific case, the wish for a gender change among those people was only because they were chemically or otherwise toxic. And when the toxicity was cleansed from their body and all the endocrine disrupting chemicals had been removed, they all snapped back to feeling at home in their original sex. So I can't say that this is universal, but I can say that for this group of patients, it was a fact, it was a reality. And so therefore there will be way more people out there who are tempted to change their sex, not because there's a real spiritual need for a gender change, but because they're poisoned.
Yeah, environmental toxins.
Yep.
And of course, medical toxins.
Yep.
My delving into SSRIs has brought up so many different things. I was listening to that amazing American doctor, Kelly
Brogan. She's great.
Kelly Brogan.
I love her.
We love Kelly Brogan.
She's so good.
And she was, I watched a short clip, I couldn't find the whole interview, with Michaela Peterson, who is Jordan Peterson's daughter.
Yes.
We were talking about him earlier.
We were.
I love Jordan Peterson. That doesn't make me extreme right-wing or a Trump supporter. I just think his mind is amazing, and considering he has done an SSRI detox,
yes,
which affected his mind,
yes,
for him to still be as brilliant as he is,
it's amazing.
Is amazing.
The wonderful thing is that over time, our wonderful bodies regenerate, yes. And so the longer he has been able to stay clear of SSRIs, the more his neurons have actually been able to regenerate. But I believe he was one of that small proportion of people who have dreadful withdrawal symptoms, which means depression, pain, sleeplessness, constant nervousness, feeling like you've had 10 cups of coffee a day, and even though you're exhausted and you want to sleep, you feel bing, and he had to deal with that. And according to a psychiatrist that I've been listening to, this bad withdrawal only affects a small proportion of people, so not everybody. But for that proportion, the feeling can be so agonizing they want to kill them. Some of them have committed suicide or have wanted to commit suicide.
Yeah, I was listening to somebody talk about a study about people that were detoxing off SSRIs, and 2 people within that study had committed suicide because they couldn't handle the withdrawals.
So you go to your doctor feeling depressed, or maybe not even feeling depressed, maybe it's just you're overworked like crazy and you wanted to have a promotion and then somebody else came in and got the promotion and you didn't get it. So you're feeling a bit down and anxious and not sure what to do, and your doctor, possibly being well-meaning, because I know for a fact that the pharma reps are paid to communicate all the beneficial effects of drugs. They're not encouraged to verbally share the negative effects, especially as I believe legally, as long as the negative effects are printed on the little bit of paper that goes with the drug.
But people don't read that.
People don't read that. But as long as the negative effects are printed on that, a doctor is not even required to inform a patient of the negative effects. And the drug rep is not required to inform the doctor of the negative effects. That's the world we're in. So if you do, for some reason, find yourself taking SSRIs, please read the small print. All of it. Yeah. And I can imagine it's incredibly hard if you live in a tiny flat in a city and you're exposed to Wi-Fi, all around, and you almost never see actual beautiful sunlight, and you almost never see nature, and you can't make time or space to have a dog. It's easy to become depressed.
Yes, it is.
But
because we're living in an inhospitable environment.
We are, and we're living in a world now where I think most of us are in a state of cognitive dissonance. I'm very proud I said that word.
Oh, I like those big words, especially when they're pronounced correctly.
Thank you, love. So cognitive dissonance, I mean, the easy way of describing it is if you buy a Mercedes, I wish, then you will automatically develop selective vision, and you'll see beautiful Mercedes everywhere, and every time you see a beautiful Mercedes, you will feel confirmed in your decision. So that is cognitive harmony. All of us want to avoid cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is when you buy a Mercedes and then, God forbid, because I'm not saying this would ever happen, you read negative information about a Mercedes. And you think, oh no, I made the wrong choice. So nowadays, there's so much, I have to say it, propaganda put out there by the mainstream about everything from the gender dysphoria we've talked about, to the myth of climate change, to the fact that we're told that using a mobile phone isn't bad for you, to the fact that so much food is sprayed with incredibly toxic chemicals, and yet most people don't realise and don't know how important detox is, or how incredibly important sleep is, and regular sleep. Most people don't realise this, but many people do. But they don't have time to do anything about it.
Other myths are alcohol being great for enhancing social occasions, when actually it's a toxic psychoactive substance. It's a drug, not a drink.
Yeah,
and then the addition of SSRIs to people that are drinking to combat living in inhospitable conditions and having cognitive dissonance are then given SSRIs.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing about alcohol is it is a very easy way to relax after a hard day work. So I understand why people will have a drink. I understand it completely. But yeah, over time it can be so harmful, as we discussed last week.
Yes.
And I think I've dug a hole for myself, but the cognitive dissonance I was mentioning, it's like many people know that what we're told in the mainstream media is not completely correct.
Yes.
But they don't have the time or the energy to do anything about it. So they know it's wrong, and they know they could be living their lives better and more, and I guess more honestly. But you don't have the time, you don't have the energy, you don't have the finances, and I understand that completely. But knowing that what you're told is not correct and is not the best way of living life, and nevertheless doing nothing about it, that creates this feeling of unease and inner stress that is not good for us.
Yes.
And that's the cognitive dissonance that is so widespread these days.
So I guess that's what's being medicated, are the symptoms of the cognitive dissonance. Now I can't say it. Cognitive dissonance.
So anyway, you are one of those brilliant people who actually got yourself off SSRIs. So what did you do?
What did I do? I did everything the wrong way. So what happened? If I'm really, I'll get really honest, because actually it's not something that's going to leave me vulnerable. I was messing about, going in and out of 12-step recovery. I was on a drug treatment program, at a day program with a local organisation. Obviously not going to say the name, and was thinking about tapering off the prescription medications. Then a series of events, I overdosed on my prescription medications and woke up in A&E.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't remember how I got there. I had to be reminded. My friend said, I don't know how. I got the feeling that I needed to phone you. You weren't making any sense, so I called an ambulance and gave them your address. And then I woke. Apparently the ambulance had come in. I was not conscious. They took me and looked after me.
Thank goodness.
It was an awful experience, but from that point on, I vowed that I would never take another prescription medication. And pretty much that is true. I've had antibiotics a couple of times, but that's because I had a dog bite which was infected. I don't take medication because of my experiences. And then I went to a 12-step fellowship and I started working in organisations that were helping people get off drugs. But what I'm finding disturbing about those organisations now is they are promoting the use of mental health medications such as SSRIs to people that have been through detoxes of street drugs and alcohol. So why take one set of substances out and then put another set of substances in?
Do you think it could be as simple as financial pressure, that pharmaceutical companies find a way of giving them such financial incentives to do that they find it very hard to say no?
I don't know. I know that I don't know it's 100% true. It's only something I've heard second hand, that some treatment services get more money for treating someone with a dual diagnosis, so they are encouraging people to go and get a mental health diagnosis. And I've actually witnessed this in my peers, women that I was lighting candles for in another episode. They got clean and sober. They were experiencing mental discomfort because their past traumas had come up, because drugs and alcohol were no longer available to push it down. They didn't have enough support through talking therapies. So they go to the doctors and then they get diagnoses of things like bipolar or anxiety disorders or whatever, and then they're put on SSRIs and all these other problems come up for them. Yeah. They revert back to substance abuse, and in the case of one of my dear friends whose loss still upsets me, she was found dead on her sofa on Christmas Day. She had gone into a crack and alcohol induced coma on top of being on prescription medications.
Oh my goodness.
She was a mother. She's left a teenage child behind.
Oh no.
You know, this is why I need to find out what's going on with these SSRIs, and why are treatment centres that are supposed to be promoting well-being and healthy lifestyles not going down the meditation, healthy eating route and getting people to take pharmaceuticals.
I think nowadays we live in a very strange world where you need to make up your own mind about absolutely everything. So a recent study, this is a scientific study I read about very recently, is that one thing, just one thing, and I'm sure there are several, works better against depression than Prozac. So off the top of your head, what do you think that is? More effective antidepressant than Prozac?
Turmeric.
Just one thing.
Turmeric.
It probably is. I love turmeric, but it was bright light. Sunlight, and even those daylight lamps that you can buy on the internet and look at in the morning for a couple of hours at home. So having one of those and looking at it for at least an hour every day, or having it like in your...
So the SAD lamps.
Yes, the SAD lamps, exactly. The SAD lamps. they were by themselves more effective at reducing depression than Prozac. And of course, they have no negative side effects.
No, because it's just light.
Yeah. So another study I read recently, and I don't know when this was taken, but I think it was quite recent, was an interview in America of a whole bunch of people who were all on SSRIs.
Yes.
And they were asked closed-end questions, so things like, do you have sleep? Do you sleep well, or do you have sleep disturbances? How is your sexual function the same? Is it worse? Is your eyesight the same? Is it worse? So clear questions. 84% said they had sexual dysfunction.
Yes.
83% all had sleep disturbances, so they couldn't get deep, restful sleep anymore. And a very similar percentage had blurred vision. And those were just 3 of the very many other side effects, like diminished lung function, like lowered immunity generally, because these drugs are chemical. They do need to be detoxed by the liver. And so the liver and the kidneys are under more pressure than normal because you're taking them all the time and they can build up in the body. And so other toxins we're exposed to are not detoxed as efficiently as they would be if we weren't taking these drugs. And depending on your genes and your lifestyle and where you live, this can have a different effect. But just to think that 84% couldn't sleep properly anymore.
Well, without good sleep, people don't function. They do feel depressed. They do feel anxious. I mean,
Yes.
I know if I just have one disturbed night's sleep, then everything else can go out. Everything else goes out the window. I can feel absolutely dreadful. I mean, that could be because I have a disturbed night's sleep, because I have a social glass of wine.
Yeah. It messes with the
messes,
quality of your sleep, doesn't it?
Yes. So natural sleep.
Yeah. My favourite tip for natural sleep is when I can force myself to get up early in the morning, go for a swim in the sea,
Yes.
in the sunrise, see the sunrise,
Yes.
come home, take my dogs for a quick walk, and then get to work. But the fact that I've been outside in the bright morning light, first thing, and actually had that shock of the cold water that really resets dopamine and lots of great levels, dopamine and serotonin in your body, and then been for a walk with my lovely dogs, then at night I sleep really well. And also people who are able to go to the gym and work out, I find the more you work your body out and the more you're physically fatigued, the better you sleep.
Yes.
So those are just simple tips, and even if you don't go to the gym, even if you just do 50 sit-ups and as many press-ups as you can manage at home, that is incredibly good as well.
Or even just a 15-minute yoga session that you can find on YouTube before you go to bed. There's even yoga sessions on YouTube that are specifically designed to do before you go to bed. So,
yoga is actually wonderful because it by definition stretches all our joints and so improves the flow of lymph fluid, lymphatic drainage, just the flow of energy through all our, you could say, our chakras and our energy meridians. And so it clinically harmonizes the body and helps you relax better.
So something else that I found interesting while finding the tip of the iceberg with the SSRI research was people from minority ethnic groups, because they have a bigger sense of community, are less likely to experience depression and therefore end up on drugs like SSRIs. So it could be deemed a white privileged problem.
That is such a good point, because if I'm feeling depressed, if some lovely person gives me a big hug and tells me everything will be all right, or if they just sit down with me with a cup of tea and listen, and really listen caringly, after somebody's listened to you ranting and letting it all out for an hour, you just feel so much better. Whereas these drugs, they numb emotions, so they numb feelings, they numb the unhappiness, yes, they numb the sadness, but they also numb a person's potential for joy, for exhilaration. And do you want to spend your life going around as a zombie?
No. And this is a question that I asked an ex-colleague of mine. I asked her to give me some pros and some cons for taking SSRIs.
Yeah.
The only pro that she came back with is if you have a genuine chemical imbalance in the brain, then it can work by readjusting it. But there's no way of testing this because people aren't tested before they go on these drugs.
Yeah.
They're just put on them, and sent on their way.
Yep.
There's not really any follow-up or feedback. They're just given a drug that is going to decimate their life. And the cons were sexual dysfunction,
Yep.
irritability, sleeplessness,
And even anxiety, right?
anxiety,
Yeah.
suicidal ideations, actual completion of suicide.
And according to Dr. Joseph Witt, who is a very lovely psychiatrist who I think has a great YouTube channel as well, the SSRIs actually change brain chemistry.
Okay.
And if you decide to go cold turkey, and instead of tapering gently, as you said one should, they just stop, it actually damages the brain, it poisons the brain, because then many people, I don't know if it's many, but quite a few people, can become so anxious they can't sleep properly.
Yes.
And even the proof that it's damaged the brain is even by going back on the drugs they were previously. It makes no difference anymore. The damage has been done. I think that's what is important to know. These are chemicals that are very, very powerful. And our brain is, our whole body, but our brain is this delicate, orchestrated balance of microtransmitters and hormones and minerals, and in the tiniest amounts. And Mother Nature knows what to do. So if I feel incredibly depressed, I know that I need to get sunshine, I need to get sleep, I need to get fresh air and be in nature. I need to try to eat less, and try, if I do eat like, have, a beef broth soup, or eat something really warming and rich in protein. And just those things will make everything better.
Yes.
I mean, it doesn't take the problems away, but then you're more able of dealing with the problems. Whereas I believe, but I could be wrong, if you take a drug or an SSRI, it just numbs everything. But are you in a better position to deal with the problems that caused the depression in the first place? Are you?
No. In my experience, being on the SSRIs, Prozac namely, everything got worse. I mean, within a couple of days, I'd gone from being thin to emaciated. I had also gone from being relatively unstable emotionally and mentally to being seriously unstable. I mean,
So it actually made you more unstable, not less.
made me more unstable. It made me thinner. It made me more anxious. I wasn't sleeping unless I took a sleeping drug. And everything compounded and got worse. And then when I came off those drugs, because I just stopped. I didn't do the tapering.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Just stopped. I literally thought the world was going to end. It took about a week for it to kick in. I mean, I was nuts, and then I remember it clearly. I was in a cafe on a Saturday night after a 12-step meeting. I got it's like getting a really, really bad headache. Then I started to shake, and I got into bed that night thinking I'll just be able to sleep this off. I couldn't sleep. I felt physically sick. I didn't sleep. I got up and I went to a 12-step meeting, and my peers were telling me this will pass. They were thinking that it would pass because they thought it was a withdrawal from street drugs, and because none of us knew any better. And it took me nearly 3 months for these feelings to end. This is a short time frame as well for withdrawals of
Yes.
SSRIs. I was also coming off benzodiazepines, which is that and alcohol are the only detoxes that can kill you. So I was really high risk and vulnerable. 3 months to feel relatively normal, for some sort of sleep eating patterns to return. I was developing a conscious contact with a spirit, which helped. I smoked like a chimney. I didn't really smoke before, and I drank loads of coffee, ate loads of sugar. So I replaced psychoactive substances with other psychoactive substances, but I was absolutely broken.
Yes.
But it took me a good 2.5, 3 years to get to a balanced state. And even then, I would say until probably about 2021, 2022, I still had ripples of coming off those SSRIs. I would have anxiety for no apparent reason, and I think it's because irreversible damage has been done to my neural pathways due to these drugs.
Absolutely.
And that is medical negligence.
Well, let's say that is a fact that is experienced by millions, that is not put out there. When you go to your average GP and he suggests antidepressants, he, as I'm in my experience, doesn't say, but just so you know, they are incredibly addictive. You won't want to stop. You'll need to take more and more just to get the same effect. And at some point, the other negative side effects like sleeplessness or loss of sexual ability or blurred vision or increased anxiety, all the other side effects will be so great you will want to stop, and then it will be the hardest thing you've done in your entire life to get off them. And I can say this from almost personal experience because I have a very close young friend who's in her 30s who has been on SSRIs for over a decade, and she's very intelligent and she knows how harmful they are, and and her anxiety levels are ridiculous, they're high, and yet she says, I'm not coming off them. She says, I know how bad they are, but I'll just have to take them for the rest of my life. Because when she tried to come off them, I guess the thing is, maybe she didn't do it under proper supervision, because I know that under supervision you need, first of all, you need a proper support network, but you need to reduce it in microdoses,
like fractions of a dose.
Yeah, absolute fractions, and it takes years to come off them properly, and you want you to give yourself years. So Kelly Brogan is one of the doctors who's incredibly experienced in helping people off them, and I think she provides lots of free information online as well. Not that I have anything to do with her at all, but she does. She's really good.
I've watched her and listened to her a little bit over the last few days, and I'm absolutely blown away by her. And you know, we're getting close to the end of time, and I wanna add this. When I went on to Cipramil, I took it in the morning. I dropped my children off at school and off to the childminder, went to work. I was working for an Irish fashion designer at the time. My job was to look gorgeous and glamorous. My jaw locked, I had blurred vision. I felt that I was intoxicated. My boss was really unimpressed. I said what had happened. They sent me home. When I got home, I only made it through the door in time before I shat my pants.
Oh my goodness.
That is another side effect that the doctor doesn't tell you. I would never have taken a drug that would have interfered with me looking after my children, or would have made me shit myself. It was humiliating.
God, yes. Thank God you got home.
Oh, I just, if that had happened in a gorgeous boutique, with
you never lived it down
in the clothes, I couldn't. Oh my God, it would have been awful. So what I'm trying to say to you is think long and hard before you fall foul of the doctor's prescription pad. And I had a conversation with a doctor in, I think it must have been about 2016. He was trying to promote various medications, including SSRIs, to help me with a frozen shoulder. He said, maybe you're depressed, maybe you're anxious, and this is related to tension. Would you like X, Y, Z? And we had the conversation went, I will never take that shit ever, ever, ever again. I have only experienced and witnessed the negative side effects of these drugs. And his high-handed, cocky attitude said, I have only experienced the positive effects of these drugs. That is a very blinkered, closed outlook.
You're very shockingly
This is supposed to be
shockingly
from an educated man of science.
Well, because the only people who can truly, truly talk about the effects of these drugs are the people who have taken them.
Yes.
And if you just prescribe them and maybe see a patient 2 weeks or 2 months later, maybe they will be feeling better. But then you don't see them 2 years later when their world has imploded. And they can't hold down a job, and they just are depressed and can't sleep anymore. So what an awful doctor.
Yeah.
There are great doctors out there.
There are some great doctors out there. I'm thinking of one now, and I'm sending her so much love because she doesn't subscribe to this. And I'm also thinking about a really lovely doctor who works in a hospital in a large city in the UK who is actively campaigning for the reduction of the amount of meds that are prescribed and promoting healthy lifestyle choices
That's wonderful.
before medication.
So there are many great doctors out there, and I'm sure the number is actually increasing.
Yes.
Because I know a lot of doctors are now studying nutrition and looking into lifestyle as an alternative to just promoting drugs. Because drugs can be life-saving.
Yes, they can.
In certain situations, they are the biggest blessing.
Yes.
But as a general rule, if you just want to, I believe, improve your own lifestyle and you're not in some, God forbid, car accident, then maybe the first port of call would be hugs, sunshine, going to kiss some puppies. Yeah, things that are free and beautiful.
Leave your email address or some contact detail in the comments below if you need help, and we'll reach out to you.
Yep,
and we can
will.
point you in the direction of Kelly Brogan and people like her. And also, you're a holistic practitioner. I can help with substance abuse. You know, there are things that we can do to help you.
There's a big network of nice people who all want to help.
Yes, and we will treat you with love and compassion.
We will.
We won't just tell you you're drug fucked.
That's not a nice expression.
It's not a nice expression, and it wasn't good to hear that from a professional who I was asking for help. I believed until that point people became doctors because they were good people and they wanted to help others.
My dad was a doctor and he was a very good person and he did want to help others. So I
Yes,
think for
some
many
do.
people that's completely true. And you know, in every walk of life you get some bad pennies.
Bad eggs, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, you are a brilliant example of the fact that you can get over SSRIs and other substance addictions and get through it and come out the other side and have a brilliant life and be happy and be in control of your own well-being without resorting to dependence on a chemical substance.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great thing.
It's 15 years now that I have been looking after my own well-being and not farming it out to others.
And it's worked a bit better.
And it's working
So much
really
better.
well.
Well done.
I mean, I'm not perfect all the time. I've had a couple of relapses and, you know, things. But yeah, generally, life is absolutely amazing.
Well, what they say is life is, I don't know, 10% how you take it and 90% what you make of it.
Yes. We are in control of our own
Exactly.
lives.
Yes.
Taking control of your life,
Yeah.
and under this particular moon, it's a particularly good time to do it. Sorry, I said particularly twice.
What moon are we under now?
So we are under the we're moving under the Rowan moon, which the Rowan tree in Scotland is protected. It's never cut down. It's always treated with reverence. So, and it's a hardy, sturdy tree. I'm a Scot. I am hardy and sturdy.
I can tell.
I'm also a Capricorn as well, so I'm probably as tough as you can get, really.
So I guess the bottom line is rely on yourself
Yes.
and make up your own mind and get as much information as you can from all around you, but don't let one person dictate to you what you should do to be happy.
Yes. Reach out to us. We will
And
help
reach
you.
out to us if you'd like to.
Or other people that are like us, that are living clean, healthy lives, and we've worked to overcome our problems by empowering ourselves,
Yep.
not clutching a prescription from somebody that doesn't care.
Actually, this is true because I've also, this is not for today, got over addiction. I spent 25 years completely under the thumb of it, and it was the hardest thing I ever did. But I got through it, I got out of it, and life keeps getting better. So
And if two women like us can do it, anybody can. You know,
Anybody
we
can.
got empowered.
we did.
You can too.
We did, and you can too.
Look,
Right.
the dogs are even smiling at what we're saying. You can't see that.
They're gorgeous.
The little blue-eyed one,
Yes. Kira.
Kira, she was smiling. Come
Come
on,
here.
girls,
Come
come
on.
and say goodbye
Come on, come and say goodbye.
to their lovely
Kira, baby,
viewers.
come up here. Come on, hop. She doesn't want to come up.
Okay. There.
There we,
We
go.
got no
There's
got
a
to the
doggy.
tail.
There's a doggy.
Here's a doggy too. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. If you like what we've got to say, press subscribe, like our video, leave comment whether you like us or whether you don't. Yeah, and like we've said, a few times, we are happy to help. Mwah! Lots of love.
See you soon.
Now,
Bye.
will the dibber work, or will I be sat here for a couple of seconds dibbing? Oh, I'm still